Before we get started, I wanted to let everybody know that I have a new book that is available on Kindle, and it is called Recommended Reading for the True Conservative. 50 pages long, and if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can read it for free. Other than that, it's $3.99. So again, that is Recommended Reading for the True Conservative. And now, on with the podcast.
Little item in the paper today. You see these all the time, so you don't know whether it's true or not. There was an accusation that, I won't mention any names, some fast food restaurants may be using rabbit meat in their burgers. There may be some truth in that. I stopped at one of those places today, and my patty ate the lettuce.
Good morning. It's Friday, Fight Song Friday, May the 8th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have Varney and Company, motivation, meditation, and fight songs. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. Now, Varney and Company.
Good morning, Cheryl. Good morning, everyone. Investors have been having a wonderful time with record profits and a possible wind down to the war, not to mention AI. Let's see what they make of the latest unemployment report released about a half hour ago. Here we go. In April, 115,000 jobs were added to the economy. That is much stronger than expected. The economists were looking for only 60,000. We got 115,000. The unemployment rate, no change, 4.3%. Now, before the numbers came out, stocks had been rallying. It's been a very good week. Now, the Dow and the S&P and the Nasdaq, they're rallying again. Dow up 140, but look at that Nasdaq go. Up another 230 points. 28.9 is the level. Real close to 29,000. The price of oil, not that much change. You're looking at $95 a barrel. Bitcoin, $80,000 or thereabouts. You're looking at, exactly 80,000. The 10-year Treasury yields around 4.37%, and the 2-year, 3.91%. 3.89 now. War news. The U.S. and Iran exchanged fire in the Gulf. The president says our destroyers knocked the hell out of them. They trifled with us, he said, and we blew them away. He says the ceasefire will hold, but, quote, they'd better sign the agreement fast. Politics. A wild statement from AOC. She says you can't earn $1 billion without breaking the rules and paying people less than they're worth. She's laying the groundwork for the seizure of wealth. After all, if you didn't earn $1 billion, you shouldn't be allowed to keep it, should you? Taylor Swift made $1 billion. Which rules did she break to get it? And are you really going to take it off her? Dramatic local elections in Britain. A crushing defeat for Prime Minister Keir Starmer's Labour Party and a big win for Trump ally Nigel Farage and his Reform Party. How about this? The White House has released a series of images which may show unidentified anomalous phenomena. You'll see them, otherwise known, by the way, as UFOs. Friday, May 8th, 2026.
And that was Varney and Company, Nonprofit News Now. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now a clip of AOC in the latest liberal talking points.
Oh, yeah. These were goals that people
AOC,
said were impossible.
Governor of New York.
All right, AOC, well, come on. She has nothing but contempt for the very wealthy. Here is AOC.
There's a certain level of wealth and accumulation that is unearned, right? You can't earn $1 billion.
Okay, so there you go. One of the things when you're dealing with liberals, you got to listen because whenever they make a statement, all statements are statements of certainty. So once they make a statement, it's violating their rules. And their rules as skeptics is no statements of certainty because nothing is certain. Okay, so how do you deal with that? Because she's creating talking points that are supposed to go out throughout the country, and you're going to hear from your family, your friends, your coworkers. You're going to hear nobody earns $1 billion. That's the talking point. So what do you do with it? The first thing you do is you ask questions. Anytime the left makes a statement, ask a question. Usually along the lines of, are you sure? And how do you know? And that defeats them right there. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Dr. Berg.
Over 80% of heart attacks and strokes are not plaque, cholesterol, or calcium that's blocking your arteries. Most of the time, when someone has a heart attack or a stroke, they die from a clot. The biggest trigger of a clot is not cholesterol. It's not calcium. Number one, and people know this, is the inhalation of smoke from cigarettes. Now your arteries are exposed to all these chemicals, and it's going to create inflammation. Also, pollution or being around any type of chemicals in the environment can do that as well. A solution is not to do vaping, okay? You need to just stop smoking. Alcohol is another one. You're drinking alcohol. It's considered a poison to the liver. It gets into the bloodstream. Birth control pills or hormone replacement therapy is another thing that can actually affect the arteries because of the hormonal interaction, increasing the risk of a stroke and heart attacks. Then you have stress. And this is an interesting one because there's something called the broken heart syndrome, where someone has a loss of a loved one, and their risk of having a heart attack goes up by 2,000%, which, by the way, triggers the clotting action. What turns down clotting? The big one is something called nitric oxide. Here are some things that can increase nitric oxide. Vitamin D. L-arginine is an amino acid that can help nitric oxide. And one of the best sources of L-arginine is meat and liver, the exact things that they tell you not to eat. There's something else that increases nitric oxide, sunlight, that can penetrate deep into the body and help increase nitric oxide in the inside of the arteries. This is why getting sun is so valuable in so many different ways, not just vitamin D.
And that. Thank you. So from Instagram, there's a clip from Janine Pirro, and so we'll have listen to it, and then I got a comment.
So Marlon Farrow, 20, of California, was sentenced to 6.5 years in prison, 3 years of supervised release, and during those 3 years, he has to pay $2.5 million in restitution. So how did Marlon end up in this mess? He ended up in this mess because he was part of a gang that would hack their way into digital accounts. But the interesting part of this is that Farrow was like, he comes in at the end. He's part of the old-fashioned burglary, where if they couldn't completely drain the victims' wallets, they literally would send Farrow in to get into the home to actually steal the Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency. This is like committing old crimes in new ways, but keeping the old-fashioned burglary and assault piece to the cryptocurrency conspiracy. So now he's going to jail, and he can think about the fact that he thought he was so smart, but he was really pretty dumb.
So, okay, she made a mistake here. The True conservative acknowledges that people are responsible for their own actions, adults, right? They're responsible for what they do. They assume authority. They assume a commensurate level of responsibility. What she said when she said, how did he end up in this mess, indicates that Marlon is not responsible for his actions, that some mysterious individual or force is responsible for his actions. And it's simply untrue. She wants to speak like a true conservative. What she would have said was, what did Marlon do to get himself into this mess? Or what did Marlon do to, what crimes did he choose to commit to get himself into this mess? That indicates that Marlon is the one that's responsible. And that's the truth. He and he alone is responsible for his actions. And you got to remember, words matter. When you talk like a socialist, you are a socialist. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, the Cold War.
February 27th, 1991, 12:30 hours. The location is in the Iraqi desert, west of Basra. The world is grey. Not the grey of an overcast day, but a suffocating, violent grey that tastes of oil and grit. A shamal, a massive sandstorm combined with freezing rain, is hammering the desert floor. The wind is howling at 30 knots. Visibility is less than 500 meters. In these conditions, war is supposed to be impossible. Inside the cramped turret of a Soviet-built T-72 tank, an Iraqi major wipes a mixture of sweat and condensation from his eyes. He is commanding a battalion of the Medina Luminous Division. These are not the terrified conscripts the world saw surrendering on CNN last week. These are the Republican Guard, the elite, the iron fist of Saddam Hussein. They have spent 8 years fighting in the marshes of Iran. They are dug in, motivated, and waiting. The major presses his face against the rubber eye cup of his optical sight. He traverses the turret slowly to the west. He is looking for the Americans. He sees nothing, just the driving rain and the endless flat scrub of the desert. He keys his radio handset. Unit 2, report visibility. Static crackles back. 0, sir. I cannot see past the berm. The sensors are useless. The major relaxes, leaning back against the cold steel of the turret ring. He lights a cigarette. He knows the doctrine. He knows that NATO tanks, like his own, rely on optical rangefinders. If he cannot see them, they cannot see him. He believes the Americans are halted miles away, huddled in their vehicles, waiting for the storm to pass. He believes he is safe. He is dead wrong. 3,000 meters away, nearly 2 miles through the blinding storm, a predator is watching him. Inside the lead American M1A1 Abrams tank, call sign Apache, the environment is different. It is quiet. The low, high-pitched whine of the gas turbine engine is a steady hum, barely audible over the wind outside. The American gunner isn't looking through glass. He is staring into a glowing green monitor, the Thermal Imaging System, or TIS. To the naked eye, the Iraqi tank is invisible, hidden behind a wall of sand and rain. But to the TIS, the world is a landscape of heat. The cold rain has cooled the desert sand, making the background dark. But the Iraqi tank? Its diesel engine is hot. Its heater is running. The crew inside is warm. On the green screen, the T-72 glows white-hot, like a burning star against a night sky. The American gunner adjusts his control handles. The crosshairs drift smoothly onto the center of the glowing white blob. The laser rangefinder flashes. Range, 3,000 meters, the computer whispers. The gunner's thumb hovers over the red triggers. The Iraqi major takes a drag of his cigarette. He checks his watch. He thinks about lunch. The American commander speaks one word: fire. A sabot round leaves the barrel of the Abrams at 3,500 miles per hour. It crosses the 2-mile gap in less than 2 seconds. The Iraqi major never hears the shot. He never sees the flash. The round impacts the T-72. It doesn't explode. It liquefies the armor. The laws of physics break down as the depleted uranium dart punches through the turret like a needle through wet paper. The ammunition carousel inside detonates. A massive fireball erupts in the grey mist. The 12-ton turret is thrown 50 feet into the air. On the radio network, panic explodes. Contact. Contact front. Where? I see nothing. Who is firing? Where are they? The Iraqi tankers are spinning their turrets frantically, searching for a muzzle flash, a shape, anything. But the desert is empty. They are being killed by ghosts. This is the Battle of Medina Ridge, the largest tank battle since World War II. But it wasn't a battle, it was an execution. And today, we are going to show you exactly how 40 minutes of technology erased 40 years of Soviet military doctrine. If you want to understand the machinery of dominance, subscribe to Cold War Impact now. Let's open the hatch. To understand why this massacre happened, we have to go back. We have to understand the fear. For 4 decades, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization NATO lived in the shadow of the Soviet tank. Intelligence reports from the 1970s painted a terrifying picture. The Soviet T-72 was faster, lower, and had a bigger gun than anything the West had. The Pentagon ran war games where thousands of American tanks were wiped out by the sheer number of Soviet armor pouring through the Fulda Gap in Germany. When the Gulf War began in 1991, the American public was nervous. The media was filled with dire predictions. They said the desert sand would destroy the complex American engines. They said the battle-hardened Republican Guard would trap the Americans in a bloody meat grinder. They warned that thousands of body bags would come home. And then there was the Vietnam syndrome. The United States had not won a major war in a generation. The commanders leading this attack, men like General Norman Schwarzkopf, had served in Vietnam as young officers. They had seen what happens when you underestimate an enemy. They were determined not to make the same mistake. The plan was audacious. It was called the left hook. While the Marines distracted the Iraqis at the Kuwaiti border, the heavy armored divisions, the 7th Corps, drove hundreds of miles west, deep into the empty desert. They swung north, then east, aiming to hit the Republican Guard from behind. Leading this charge was the 1st Armored Division, Old Ironsides. 348 M1A1 Abrams tanks, the most powerful armored formation ever assembled in human history. But as they approached Medina Ridge on that rainy afternoon, the American crews were on edge. They were tired. They had been moving for days, and they were terrified of one thing above all else: chemical weapons. Intelligence reports suggested that Saddam Hussein had authorized the use of sarin nerve gas. Every American soldier inside those tanks was sweating in a thick, charcoal-lined MOPP suit. Rubber gloves, rubber boots. If the alarm sounded, they had seconds to mask up or die. The tension inside the hulls was suffocating. On the other side of the ridge, the Iraqi strategy was sound. The Medina Division had deployed in a classic reverse slope defense. They placed their tanks behind the crest of the hill. The idea was simple geometry. The American tanks would have to drive up the hill. As they reached the top, their guns would be pointing at the sky for a few critical seconds. Their thin bottom armor would be exposed. That is when the Iraqis, hidden in prepared positions, would open fire at point-blank range. It was a trap that had destroyed British tanks in North Africa in 1942. It was a trap that destroyed Israeli tanks in 1973. The Iraqis sat in their holes, confident. They had the ground, they had the numbers, they had the weather. But they forgot one thing. They were fighting a war of angles. The Americans were fighting a war of electrons. Let's pause the battle for a moment to look at the machine that changed everything. The M1A1 Abrams. The Iraqi T-72 was a tank designed for World War III, but built with the mindset of World War II. It was small, cheap to produce, and relied on being part of a massive swarm. Its gun sights were optical glass and mirrors. To shoot, you had to stop the tank to let the suspension settle. The Abrams was a spaceship by comparison. It had 3 distinct advantages that the Iraqis couldn't comprehend. Number 1, the eyes. We mentioned the thermal imaging system, but you have to understand how good it was. An Iraqi tank commander looking through his periscope in the rain could see maybe 800 meters. The Abrams thermal sight could classify a target at 3,000 meters. That is a 2.2-kilometer advantage. The Americans could shoot the Iraqis for a full 2 minutes before the Iraqis could even see them. Number 2, the brain. The Abrams had a digital ballistic computer. It measured wind speed, humidity, air temperature, and even the bend of the gun barrel caused by solar heating. It used a laser to get the exact range. But the real magic was the stabilization. The gun of the Abrams was gyroscopically stabilized on 2 axes. The The tank could be driving 40 miles per hour over rough rocks, bouncing violently, but the gun barrel would stay locked on the target like a sniper's rifle. The Iraqis had to stop to shoot. The Americans could kill while moving at full speed. Number 3, the silver bullet. The ammunition. The Iraqis were firing steel darts. The Americans were firing the M829A1, a dart made of depleted uranium. Uranium is 2.5 times denser than steel. When this dart hits enemy armor, it doesn't mushroom or flatten, it self-sharpens. As it pushes through the armor, the edges shear off, keeping the point razor sharp. It generates so much friction heat that it is pyrophoric. It catches fire on contact with air. So, when it punches into the tank, it sprays the crew with molten, burning uranium dust. It was a weapon of absolute terror. Armed with these tools, the 1st Armored Division crossed the phase line smash and rolled toward the ridge. Time, 12:45 hours. The battle begins. The 1st Armored Division crests a small rise. The Medina Division is ahead. Contact front. Tanks. Many tanks. The American formation is massive. A wedge formation 5 miles wide. On the Iraqi side, the confusion is absolute. An Iraqi captain in a T-55 screams into his radio, "We are being hit. Who is firing?" He looks left. The tank next to him erupts. The turret flies off. He looks right. An armored personnel carrier explodes, turning into a bonfire. He orders his driver to charge. "Move! Move forward! Close the distance!" The Iraqi tanks roar out of their defensive holes. They charge blindly into the rain, hoping to find the enemy. This is exactly what the Americans want. As the Iraqi tanks move, their engines work harder. They get hotter. On the American thermal sights, the targets get brighter and brighter. Inside the Abrams tanks, the rhythm is robotic. "Gunner, Sabot, tank," the commander says. "Identified. Fire. On the way. Boom. Target cease. Next target." It is relentless. The Americans are destroying an Iraqi vehicle every 4 to 5 seconds. One American platoon leader, Captain H.R. McMaster, who would later become a famous general, leads his troop, Eagle Troop, deep into the enemy line. They are outnumbered, but the fire rate is so high, the Iraqis think they are facing an entire regiment. The Iraqis try to fight back. They fire hundreds of rounds. Red tracers streak through the grey rain. Most of the shots fly high or hit the dirt. They are guessing the range. But one lucky shot finds a mark. An Iraqi shell hits the turret of an Abrams tank dead on. The crew inside flinches. They wait for the explosion. They wait for death. Nothing happens. The commander checks the diagnostics. "We're okay! We're okay!" The Iraqi shell shattered against the Chobham armor. It left a scratch. The American gunner turns the turret toward the Iraqi tank that fired. Return fire. One shot. The Iraqi tank is vaporized. The psychological impact of this is devastating. Imagine fighting an enemy you cannot see, who moves faster than you, and who cannot be killed by your weapons. The Iraqi morale breaks. Crews begin to bail out of perfectly good tanks. They run into the desert, hands up, desperate to surrender to the metal monsters emerging from the storm. By 1300 hours, just 40 minutes after the first shot, the guns fall silent. The storm begins to clear. The sun pushes through the clouds. The 1st Armored Division rolls forward to assess the damage. The scene is apocalyptic. Medina Ridge is a graveyard. Burning hulks of T-72 tanks line the horizon. The smell of burning diesel, melting rubber, and cooked ammunition hangs heavy in the air. In just 40 minutes, the U.S. Army has destroyed 186 enemy tanks, 127 armored vehicles, dozens of artillery pieces. And the cost? The 1st Armored Division lost 0 tanks to enemy fire. One American soldier, Specialist Ardon Cooper, was tragically killed, but even that was due to friendly fire in the confusion, not by the enemy. The Battle of Medina Ridge was the final nail in the coffin of the Soviet military reputation. It proved that in the modern age, mass is irrelevant. It doesn't matter if you have 10,000 tanks if you can't see the battlefield. The Iraqi commander we met at the start, his tank was found with the turret blown off. He had died without ever knowing where the enemy was. This battle taught the world a lesson that stands to this day. Superior technology, combined with superior training, creates an unfair fight.
And that was the Cold War. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that you're not neutral and that the government has no rights.